I guess you could say if he didn't stop the monster, he knew what was at stake. Here's a look at the NECA. This is the horror of Dracula, Van Helsing ultimate action figure. NECA presents the second in a series of action figures from the legendary Hammer House of Horror. Hammer has produced landmark horror since the 1950s, with the first being the horror of Dracula. The film captured audiences with a mix of vivid color, carnality, and violence. Peter Cushing plays the iconic character Van Helsing, who is sent to destroy Dracula, as played by Christopher Lee. This ultimate Van Helsing stands at 7-inch scale and features an interchangeable waist for an alternate look in either his vest or long coat. Do old ideas rest comfortably in your open mind? Nothing but new ideas, though, from the folks over at NECA. Before, though, we get a closer look at the horror of Dracula, Van Helsing. Yeah, let's take the tape measure and see how tall the figure stands. If you've already picked up, though, the Christopher Lee Dracula, then clearly, though, you're going to be seeking out to get Van Helsing, too. The figure's going to stand at 7 inches in height, at least with the head that he has right now. That translates, though, to a figure that's 18 centimeters tall. I think it's crazy to think that we've already gotten ourselves a horror Dracula Christopher Lee, and then to think as well that we've already gotten ourselves a Vincent Price. Lee, Cushing, and Price, all from one company. Certainly, if you're a fan of classic horror films, nothing gets better than this. Clearly, though, also you can see that Van Helsing is the shortest of the three. When Helsing's around, heads will roll. In fact, a couple of times I've caught his heads rolling away from me. He has actually 3 alternate head portraits. We'll kind of talk about that more in a moment. First, the figure does have 2 variation styles of hands. He actually has gloved hands. He also comes with bare hands. Now, you can either choose to have these hands, obviously, with his long jacket. You can also go with the bare hands as well. Either way, though, getting out of the packaging, I think these were the original hands that he had before I yanked them off the forearms. These hands, while being a little bit smaller of a grip, they're suitable for holding the cross. I guess we'll also look at the cross as well. I was actually really worried I was going to be losing this thing because it was so small. You can take it like, for example, this hand. And because, of course, the thumb is so close to the pointer, it makes for the perfect hand for holding the cross. You basically just put the cross in between his fingers like this. I don't want to really do the blizzard test for the risk that this may fall to the floor. He does also come included with larger gripping hands, good for holding the stakes. And when it comes to his stakes, he likes his stakes like he likes his vampires. Very, very rare. The actual stakes themselves, which he actually comes with 2 variations of it. He comes with 1 stake on its own, and then he comes with a stake that's paired together. There's like 4 of them all stuck together. Don't try to pry them apart. They're supposed to look this way. You get yourself the stake. Let's maybe grab the right hand for that. Take yourself the stake, which is right over here. There we go. You can take the stake and hold it in his hand. It does sit admittingly a little looser. I guess you could also really go back to the original hand that we also had a look at and use that also for the stake, which I'm guaranteed will give you a much firmer grip. Yeah, you can see like this one's, I can easily do the blizzard test with this one. Stop that. The figure does also come included with his hammer. Now, if you're going to have a stake, you need to have a hammer. That's how stakes works. Basically, you would lunge that into the chest of a vampire, tap, 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 knock, knock, and until, of course, the vampire is dead. If that's the one rule of thumb when it comes to killing vampires, you can also use sunlight. Of course, you can also use the power of God. You can also use garlic. I think if anything, like garlic doesn't sometimes always work with vampires. A lot of times, if anything, it's just going to give a vampire bad breath. This is one thing that I think is a really cool accessory. I guess before we do that, though, the figure does also come included with a couple of bare hands, again, for also holding the stakes. Speaking of crosses, though, were we just talking about crosses? We were. He does also have the makeshift candle holders that he can actually use to makeshift a cross. With the hands that he has, with these hands actually, you basically just take yourself. I guess I probably should be also showing you guys what this looks like in his. Okay, so if we use the hands that he has, these hands actually probably are the better ones for holding the stakes. But like if you wanted to have him holding the candlesticks, basically you're just going to want to remove the hands that he has. Just pop off one, replace it with this hand here. We'll do the same thing on this side as well. Now, again, like with this being a smaller grip, yeah, it's probably the better hand for holding like the hammer, which again, you can just take the hammer and slide it into his grip. It's a very small grip, mind you. Or again, you can also use that for holding the stake, which I guess really, yeah, okay, we'll go back and grab the stake again. There it is right there. Okay, we'll just take the stake, wedge it right in there, just to show you that it does work. And it holds okay, but I mean, like, you really have to, I almost even would say, like, heat this up with hot water first, because the steak is really hard to get into his hands, at least this hand here. Anyways, though, what I did want to show you is how to have him holding the cross. So we'll go ahead and just kind of wiggle the hands off here. We started on one side, we'll finish on the other. Plug then the other hand in. I think I have developed more calluses on my fingers just with the changing of the accessories on Van Helsing, especially when it comes to his torso. Anyways, though, you're basically going to take yourself the candlesticks here. Obviously, they're missing their candles altogether. And just pry the fingers away from the palm, just enough that you can kind of get the candlesticks in there. The blasted thumb, I will say, will always get in the way. So, again, like, just kind of do bear with me. Go ahead and get that in his hand on one side. There's one. Okay, there's one. And then we'll basically just do the exact same thing on the other side. Now, I'm probably going to be displaying this guy without the jacket myself. You can also choose to go with the jacket. But again, like, you get basically kind of just crisscross applesauce. You must do a much better job than what I'm just doing right now. But at least it shows you the idea that you can hold it like the cross. I think that's really cool. Okay, so let's go ahead and just take those all out of his hands. Like I said already, the figure does come included with 3 swappable head portraits. All 3 of them undeniably look like the late actor, Peter Cushing, which I think actually passed away. He passed away in 1994. To be all honest with you, I thought Peter Cushing passed away a lot longer ago than that. 1994. Guy's had a very long career. I mean, a lot of people probably will attach him more to Star Wars than maybe the Hammer horror films. Obviously, if you're a bigger fan of horror, you'd probably know him more so as Van Helsing. Now, this is actually one of the head sculpts. This is actually the original head sculpt that comes out of the packaging with. This has him with the hat. But if you like maybe the head sculpt as it is right now, but you maybe don't like the idea of a hat, he does come with this alternate head port as well. Changing out the heads, I mean, obviously you can't remove the hat, but if you want to change the head, just easily pop it off the ball joint, take the head then you want to use. Seem to be all thumbs in this review. Popping that then in place. So this is what we started with. This is what we're, I don't want to say ending with, because still there's one other head to go with. Yeah, all 3 heads, even though I haven't really yet showed you the other one, looks so uncanny like Peter Cushing, the actor. Of course, oh, there goes one of the heads. The other alternate head and the third choice of the 3 happens to be this one. Now, for me, I'm going to be displaying this guy on the shelf pitted against the evils of Dracula. So for me, I would rather go with this head sculpt myself. And again, that basically would just plug in place. Before I actually do that, though, I did want to show you guys well, you know what? I did want to show you first, I guess, the jacket. Then I'll swap out the bodies. So we'll just pop the head back in place. So, of course, he does have this scarf underneath there, a long jacket here, which, you know, to look at this jacket, I was thinking to myself, you know, if to try to get more mileage, obviously, out of these molds, I wonder if NECA can maybe use this body for an ultimate Candyman. Candyman does have a furry collar like this. I'm not really sure, though, if the long jacket like this looks similar to Candyman, but I think it's pretty close. The actual sleeves themselves, this time around, you don't actually have to remove to try to take off the entire top torso. You literally basically just going to grab the top of his body and yank the bottom end of it and just basically pry it loose that way. The articulation is going to stay the same between all the 2 different looks to Van Helsing. So there's probably no need to really cover that right now. Yeah, really happy with this. You know, I always really say this jokingly. I never really usually don't pull the trigger and buy more than one figure unless I find it for a decent price. I would really hope I find myself another Van Helsing for a decent price, because I would really like to have the figure displayed in two of his distinct looks. Now, speaking of this distinct looks, trying to get that all out, we're going to first go ahead and remove the head. Not that it's crucial, though, because really you're only yanking the entire top torso away from the body. But I'm going to do this anyways just because I really want to use this head with that body. So we're going ahead and just detach the top of his head. Well, we'll just remove his head. This is the thing I had a real hard time doing, and probably one of the reasons why my fingers are so sore. You want to really kind of yank the body in a way that you don't feel like you're breaking it, but you need to apply enough pressure to it just to remove the top of his torso. I find it was sort of helpful to wiggle it back and forth. You could also really take, technically, a hairdryer and make a few passes like right around here just to kind of soften up. I mean, ultimately, though, you have to kind of still penetrate the plastic to get to the joint underneath. But wiggle it back and forth till finally the top of the torso comes off. You don't have to remove the arms, not at all. I mean, if anything, again, just decide which head you want to then use and just attach it. It's harder, honestly, to now get this back onto his body because you can't really see whereabouts it's going. Anyways, you're going to detach all that together. I guess you kind of just put it over there. That looks a little strange and out of place. And then you're going to take this alternate piece, which does away altogether with a longer jacket, now in favor of what almost seems to be like a leather vest. The shirt and now tie are here, where obviously the other one only had just the scarf. And again, like, heating this up would be very much a good help, a good contributor as to getting this body properly onto his body. Now, still, you probably can see I'm having a hard time doing this. I may, in fact, have to go and heat this again. Since I've started obviously talking away, the plastic is now cooled, and I might even have a harder time. So what I might just do is heat this up again, and we'll try our best to get the torso back onto the lower legs. Yeah, with heating this up, it makes things a whole lot easier getting the torso on top of his legs. Still, though, I know when rotating this around, I'm probably going to end up having this pop off. You may find yourself having to repeat the steps in order to get this properly attached to his torso. If you settle on obviously which look you want to go with for Van Helsing, then it really won't matter. Or if you do what I'm probably going to end up doing, picking up a second one of these figures, then you can have him clearly displayed in his two different looks. Now let's go ahead and take ourselves this head sculpt, which I really love this head. I mean, clearly you look, he's determined. He really wants to vanquish the enemy. Now we're going to go ahead and just take the head and we're going to pop it onto the neck. Before I actually do that, though, one thing I did want to mention, it does seem, though, to me like the neck color isn't quite the same color as Van Helsing's face. It's close enough. I mean, obviously, if you're going to also have the head low enough down there, you may not notice it, but it does seem like very much it's a different color altogether of plastic. Go ahead and take the head for Van Helsing, and boy, oh boy, we're having a whole lot of struggle getting everything in place. Popping it back onto the ball joint. There we go. I mean, realistically, if you have it low enough down there, you're not going to even notice it. It's not really until you look at it from the side that you're going to see like the color variations are there. Now, again, you can also go beeline it back to obviously all the accessories that came included with Van Helsing. Yeah, the cross. Yeah, the stake. Again, the hammer. You can also do that as well. The thing I really love about this is while there is a little bit of struggle to get things from here to here, once you settle on this, I mean, the idea alone that we're getting ourselves two separate torsos, when, like, back in the day, if you were to think of any other figure company doing this, even like NECA, like years and years ago, they probably would have eventually released a Van Helsing in two variations. Long jacket Van Helsing, probably even would have called it on the packaging, and also vest Van Helsing, or last stand Van Helsing. Oh, that sounds even better. Yeah, I like the look of the vest. He does also have, like, now rolled up sleeves and bare arms. Of course, like the hands, like when you're looking at the hands, they're not really quite the same color as his forearms. Kind of, again, in the same way that the head isn't quite the same color as his neck. Other than that, though, I really like the look of this. I couldn't help but think, like, if I'm going to be bringing back in, I don't know if it's a good idea having these guys so close to one another. It does almost even seem like he's using the same top of his legs as the Christopher Lee Dracula. Torso is a little bit different. Like if I was actually pry away the curtains, it isn't quite the same wrinkles on the top of his pants that are here on Van Helsing. But it does, though, seem to me like maybe they are using the same top thighs, although maybe not. There's a little bit of wrinkling on the back. Clearly, though, the lower legs are different from one another, and they're also using different shoes. As a side note, though, I just want to also point out that Cushion seems to have smaller feet than Christopher Lee. Not that it really matters, though, at all. While we're certainly on the topic, though, of his feet, the one issue I really have with Van Helsing is that his pants run as low as they do. Being that there's not much space allotted to the tops of his shoes, I find like I can't quite get his feet to be angled up, enough at least where the figure seems to have an easier time to stand. I find actually like getting Van Helsing to stand seems more of an issue unless I actually turn the feet slightly more sideways. If I turn it sideways, he seemed to do a better job of balancing, but even then, I almost feel like, even though obviously visible joints wouldn't be something that you'd really want to see, but if they had only just lifted the pant leg a little higher, I feel like that could have been the thing to fix the issues with having the feet not completely flat. Or, no, again, like looking at them, you can almost even see, like, the feet almost seem to have a trend of wanting to angle down, and I can't quite bend them up any higher than that. But again, like, if you have yourself a display stand, even though like the figure itself doesn't have a display stand, you could, though, make use of the peg holes. They're obviously on the bottoms of his feet. Now, for the figure's articulation, while we're still sticking with this look to Van Helsing, head's going to be then again on a ball joint, so it allows the head to rotate all the way around. Head's going to look up and down and back and forth. Here's the one part I figured was going to probably come loose for me. Oh, yeah, the ball joint seems to be working okay. Again, if you're having an issue, heat this in hot water. A few passes, maybe with the hairdryer, I might even fix it as well. The arms rotate all the way around. Van Helsing's arms also allow him to get a 90-degree angle bend, or that classic T-pose. The figure does have a swivel, and one thing that's clever, though, is that they put the swivel right underneath the sleeve. So even though, yeah, you're obviously seeing the hinge joint for the elbow, it's not as easy, though, to see the swivel just below the bicep. Yeah, single hinge on the elbow only. The hands rotate all the way around, back and forth there. The legs for Van Helsing do split out, almost a full splits if you really wanted to. They, of course, move forward, and they move back. There's a swivel at the top of the thigh, right there, right there, right there. Single hinge for the knee, lower leg rotation, ankle pivot up and down. Although, again, I would have liked if the ankle pivot would have worked a little bit better. But then you've also got that ankle rocker as well. Hard thing, really, when you get a figure this good is how will you display them? That seems to always be the topic, I think, to myself, even when I'm reviewing these figures. You know, when you kind of start the review with Van Helsing looking like this, and you think, man, that's a nice-looking sculpted jacket. But then you kind of change the location, change the look of the character, I should say. Then you start to look at this and think to yourself, you know, I kind of like the look of him as well. That's always the hard thing. And kind of really, again, in a positive way, that's one of the problems when it comes to NECA releases. Ultimate figures get so many accessories. There he goes, falling. They get so many accessories. The hardest thing to really then be is to choose which look that you want to have for the character. Van Helsing looks good in both looks, whether you want to go with the long jacket or, again, you want to go with the vested look. Both looks, though, still result in the same issue with the figure. He doesn't have the easiest time standing. You know, again, like you can also just angle the feet a little bit out. A lot of times, like even at the beginning of this video, I kind of had his feet a little angled outward like this. That kind of helps to stabilize the figure. If not, again, you can always make use of a display stand. One is not included, though, with Van Helsing, but because, again, he's using universally sized peg holes, you can easily use it from another figure company instead. Let's just say that this is the look of Van Helsing you're looking to go with. Unfortunately, one sacrifice has to be made. The figure can't then have gloved hands. I know what you're probably thinking. Gloved hands, who cares? Well, the gloved hands with the wider grips are actually the proper hands for holding the candlesticks. So if you want to have Van Helsing with that makeshift cross, he isn't going to cut it with this look to Van Helsing because clearly he can't have gloved hands. It's going to look clearly out of place. Still, at least for displaying this guy on the shelf, I'm going right now with the stake in one hand, the cross in the other. Initially, I did think, like, the cross really should have been molded to a hand so that there was no risk of losing it. But, you know, though, it's not small enough to be lost. I mean, even if I was to drop it on the floor, I'd know exactly where it was. Plus, two, you may decide you want to have it with either one of his hands. You don't want to feel so dedicated and committed that it has to go with one look to Van Helsing. And obviously, clearly speaking of different looks, not only does he have the long jacket look, which, you know, again, was a bit of a struggle to try to detach from the lower half of his body. Once it's freed, though, attaching the new torso might also be a problem for you. Again, I would recommend in this review maybe heating it with a hairdryer. That I find is always the easiest fix. Some people don't really like the idea of submerging their figures in hot water because it could damage and warp the plastic. Heating it, though, temporarily with a hairdryer might be the easier fix of changing from one look to the other. Of course, he does also have 3 different head sculpts, all unique from one another. But again, I think if you're going to be going with this look for Van Helsing, not that I'm really going to be the guy that's going to tell you can't do it this way, you can't do it this. But I think, though, like, to have Van Helsing with the hat isn't going to make any sense at all with this look to him. Instead, go with the unhat look. For me, this is my favorite of the 3. And all 3 of them, I mean, come on. Forget about it. I mean, they all look classic, like Van Helsing and Peter Cushing, who played the role so faithfully. I mean, if you're a fan, certainly, of the horror Dracula, the Hammer horror stuff of what NECA's been doing already with Lee's Dracula, clearly, if you've picked up Lee's Dracula, you'll want to pick up Cushing's Van Helsing to pit against him. What do you guys think of Van Helsing? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you've also been lucky enough to pick up this figure, let me know down below if you're going with the long jacket look or if you're going with the vest look that I have him in right now. If you guys also did enjoy this video, all you should do is throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? Yeah, I hope so. Hit that subscribe, turn on that bell, and of course come back. If you still need also a fix for NECA, popping up at the very end of this video will also be playlists. Yeah, that's going to cover the entire, like 700 videos or so that I have on this channel, covering off everything that NECA's been doing over the years. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.